The following is an encore presentation of new expressions.
Friday morning, 10 a.m., and it is a beautiful day outside. Had a lovely drive into work today. Yes, I was playing music that we don't play on here, but it was still good. Yes, I know. It was safe.
Okay, let's edit that part out.
Okay.
And just kick off again with new expressions Friday morning, 10:05.
Friday morning.
10:05?
New expressions.
I'm not looking, is it 10:05?
10:05. Yes, it is.
There we go. The clock's behind me.
Oh, my goodness.
And I was just having a crack at what the time was. It is obviously new expressions because we've been silly.
People know when they tune in. Oh, these guys again, weren't they on yesterday? No. It's once a week. This feels like it's every minute.
Yeah.
We understand.
And you can't escape us.
No. It's a secret. But every Friday I get to sit with my amigo and share coffee. Thank you very much for bringing my coffee this morning. I love you for that. And
Pleasure.
you always bring us interesting and powerful leaders on the coast. And
isn't that bizarre?
Yes.
We are so blessed on the Central Coast of New South Wales. So blessed because we have absolutely wonderful church leaders in the region.
Yeah, we do.
I've been looking forward to this one because this one's hard to get. The guest in the studio today, Father Brian, from Broken Bay Diocese. Is that it's actually your home base is the entrance, but it's actually formally the Diocese of Broken Bay, yeah?
Well, it's in the local church of Broken Bay, but my parish, which I'm the pastor of, is Our Lady of the Rosary at the entrance, and I'm the dean for the Central Coast, it's the vicar for rain, which doesn't mean I'm praying for rain. It's the vicar for that area.
Yeah.
I vicariously act on behalf of the bishop in caring for the people of God here. But
Beautiful.
But the bishop's the bishop, not me.
Right. So how many business cards you got?
Oh no. I only got one.
You got one?
Only one.
It's completely full.
It's a big card.
There's no more room left for anything. No one's making any
right.
notes on that one.
That's right. But it is a beautiful morning, and I really enjoyed my walk. I always go for a walk down to the ocean. Some days I go down to the lake on the other side. There's a lot to be said for the entrance. It's a nice, nice part of the world, and it is a beautiful. It's a beautiful time of the year as well. So I'm enjoying that. I think at the moment, I think all our eyes have been on the United States. I think we've been saturated with the media, and I think a lot of people would say, when are we voting? Because we had more coverage here than in America.
I know.
Feels like
and we feel like we should have been able to vote. But it in some ways it makes me like our system because we're a lot more low key. And our election hearing only for a short time, and I think compulsory voting, and we're exercising our democratic right. We don't have to be twisted arms to vote. So there's a lot of things I like about our system, but I think we're all aware of the election and the results there, and hopefully it's a peaceful transition. I suppose from my Catholic Christian understanding of things, I wasn't that pleased with the whole thing of reproductive rights. That whole thing of abortion kind of was a sort of a thing that was thrust out there, which is a bit sad. And a lot of the rhetoric between the leaders is very unbecoming. So whatever actually ends up being, I think the new president-elect is a lot of bluster. What it actually will do, time will tell, and we pray for a peaceful transition, and hopefully all of the politicians will serve the people of God. The people of that country. It's not our country, but it influences the world.
I can agree on a couple of things. I don't like how they're disrespectful to each other. You should always respect the office and the office that you're running for. You should always respect that. But the person who's sitting in it, you should respect the office. You don't have to like the guy or the girl, but respect the office.
That's right.
You got to have that. So I don't like it when it turns into a sludge match. That's not going to make me want to vote for you. You're sent to govern for the people. Do that and tell me how you're going to do that. I don't care what your opinion is about the other person. But one thing about these trading systems that I do like is that if the person in office is doing well, they can just stay there. You know what I mean? I mean, in the U.S., you got 4 years, so you think. You really only got 2 years to govern. The other first year and second year, you're proving yourself, and the last year, you're running again.
Yeah.
So
it's a little bit like that here sometimes, but it's a lot more low key. So I'm kind of happy about it. But you just pray for the whole world and those places that are at war at the moment. You feel for the Middle East, the complexities of things there, Ukraine. You just hope that there'll be a positive influence, the states, and all of us will do our bit to somehow have resolution there. And I was just talking to you beforehand about the Christian minority in a lot of those places. Right. Well, not so much Ukraine because they're mainly Orthodox and narrow Catholics, but and it's just even worse because Russia and Ukraine have both got the same faith background. Yeah. But in the Holy Land, it's just such a minefield of messiness, and the three world religions are kind of there, and you just have to have the wisdom of Solomon. Yes. But no one seems to be able to solve it. It's just a perpetual thing, and it's just so horrible to see the people who are innocent being affected and killed at the moment. Yeah, I think in our local Central Coast, it's good that we've had an election finally for our local government. We were sort of under administration for 5 or so years. Yeah. So you hope that our new mayor and councillors will do a good job. It's an interesting area. It's growing a lot. It's been a retirement place, but it's also a lot of young families have moved up, and I think in America a lot of the reaction to the voting for the Republicans was people were feeling hurt and feeling left out, and I think. In Australia, I think a lot of families are really struggling with interest rates and the whole trying to buy a place. It's so hard now, and that's attracted people to the coast. But the coast is pretty expensive anyway. Yes. But I think if there's one lesson, it's to learn to try to listen to where our families are at and try to have compassion for people who are really struggling. And I think all of us and church leaders should be very much people of compassion if we follow Jesus. So to have compassion and understanding for the struggles that people are going through. I know locally, because I'm at the entrance, we had the terrible tragic death of that little young man last Sunday.
Devastating.
I was going for a walk. I went past that spot about an hour earlier, and there were a lot of visitors. And many of them are new to the country, and often from countries where they've not ever swum. Yeah. And it's just such a beautiful day, and you don't see the dangers. Yeah. It doesn't looks like a very peaceful the channel there, but it is dangerous. They've got a very beautiful memorial there at the moment with flowers and a picture of the young man. And I don't know if the family can even speak English, but there's a thing from them saying thank you to all the people who did their bit in trying to find him, and they did find the body. Yeah. And it makes you appreciate the volunteers like lifesavers and marine rescue and the police and all those people who give of themselves. And it's a great thing. So I'm really very grateful for all those people, and brings out the best in people, doesn't it, when a tragic event happens? Yeah. And we hope as we get into the hot season now that it's a time of safety and people are very careful.
Yeah, and thank you for those thoughts, because this is a beautiful location, and you got a prime posse there in the entrance. I love it. I love the entrance. I mean, it's been a holiday destination for a very long time. Yeah, people actually want to go there, right?
Yeah, it's holiday, but it's got everything from very wealthy to ordinary to people who are on the edge.
That's right.
And people who have different dependencies, and so there's a whole cross section of people. So it's always an interesting area, and you get everything there. So it's not boring. No, life is not boring.
And when you say everything, they have my favorite lolly there.
The favorite what?
My favorite lolly. Oh, yeah. As you guys would say, lolly.
Or candy, as you would say.
Yeah, red vines. They actually sell them there. And I'm like, wow, I've been eating those things since I was 3.
Okay.
They're an American form of licorice. Your licorice It's too sweet. I can't. It's too sweet. This one's a little dry. It's hollow.
So it's like if we went to America, we'd want Tim Tams.
Yes, which you can get there now.
Oh, really?
Get Tim Tams and Vegemite everywhere.
That's good.
You can get
That's
it.
good.
But now
That's
they have
good.
my favorite lolly there. Amen.
Yeah.
There you
Go to the entrance.
Oh, and I think the other thing is, from my Catholic perspective, what's been happening in the Catholic Church worldwide, we've just had a synod in Rome. It's been something quite a little bit radical for us is that we had a synod of representatives, bishops and priests and lay faithful from around the world coming together to. It's been a couple of year process. We've had consultation in the local areas, the churches, and we had representatives going to Rome for this gathering. And we had two locals. We had our bishop who lives at Wahroonga, but he's the Bishop of Broken Bay, and our Chancellor, who's a lay woman who lives up in Carryong, and she's part of Gosford Parish. So they both went to Rome for this synod.
Wow.
And we don't know what the results of it will be, but it's more a way of living, a way of process of consultation.
Yeah.
Rather than Father knows best, or you know,
Sure.
and so it's hopefully it's a good thing, and hopefully it's good to listen attentively. And Saint Benedict said, "Listen with the ears of the heart." So it's to try to really
Perfect.
listen to what people are saying. It's a bit like with this elections, what's it saying about where people are at in America, and the hurt. And so what's the church needs to really listen. So anyway, that we'll see how that goes.
How often do you have that?
It's only been Pope Francis just started this.
Oh, really?
It's not something we normally have. No.
Okay.
There is
Like a
the bishops.
global
The bishops would. There is consultation. There's a bishops' conference, and but this is the first time we've had this particular entity.
Expression of
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
So it's a new thing, and we don't know where it's going. Pope Francis is kind of a little bit different. He's a South American of an Italian background, and he does things a bit different. He shakes up the system, which some people like and some people don't.
Yes. Yeah.
His other thing he's done is in electing cardinals, so cardinals are bishops generally, who main task is when the Pope dies, they lock them in a room and they have to pray and they elect a new Pope.
The conclave.
The conclave, yes, and the white smoke,
Yes.
etc. But normally they've come from the main diocese, the bigger diocese. But this Pope has shaken things up because they've come from unusual places like Tonga,
right.
Papua New Guinea, Timor-Leste. And he just did a radical thing in Australia. He's made one of our Eastern Rite Catholic bishops a cardinal.
Wow.
So he's
So that
only
would be
40,
unusual.
he's only 44, and he's 90. More than 90% of Catholics come from Latin Rite,
Yes.
or what you'd normally think of as Catholics,
Roman Catholic.
and maybe 5 to 10% come from about 30 different Eastern rites, or Eastern. Instead of calling it dioceses, they call them eparchies, and one of them is Ukrainian,
Right.
which is not a big church.
Sure.
It's not a big church in Australia. We have had people coming from Ukraine in recent times, but this bishop has only been a bishop here for a year or so, and he comes from Canada, because Canada had a lot of Ukrainians move to Canada. It's a lot in the past. Anyway, but at 44, he's been made a cardinal, so he's the only cardinal in Australia. So and he's, I think, about the youngest bishop in
I was about to
Australia.
say, yes, he would be. Yes.
Yeah, so very interesting, and one of the smallest Eastern rites.
yeah.
So we don't know how that's what that is. It's very interesting. The bishops must have been surprised themselves.
Is that like a nod to that tradition to say this is important too?
I see it that way, and maybe it's because of the present conflict in Ukraine.
Yeah.
But it's also it's kind of to get a voice to not the little man, these side things, because sometimes the loudest voice and the most prominent places don't necessarily have the fullness of wisdom.
Yeah.
And so if you start to if it's always places like London or Sydney or New York, you kind of expect that.
Yeah.
But when it's someone on the edge, it's kind of interesting.
Yeah. See, I like that term you use, fullness of wisdom.
Yeah, when he
that's
said
not-
that,
yeah, yeah.
when you said that, I went, "Oh, that's
Yes.
wisdom." Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes the loudest person isn't the wisest. I mean, I'm a loud person, and so I would say I'm not necessarily always the wisest.
I'm the quietest guy in the room.
Yeah, that's. I'm sure you are.
Yes.
So they always know. When I was at school, that's what I got into trouble for. Was talking. So I've never had a trouble talking. But I mean, so I think he's really saying he wants to hear from the edges. And I think that's, as I say, with some of the elections, is that some of our politicians would do well to listen to people at the edges.
See, I like that.
Yeah.
I really like that because you'll find people in those smaller spots. They're very loyal. They could be disgruntled because the bigger people are getting the voice, but they're still there and still serving. And the one thing that I would say about the church is that I really do think we should pay attention to is stop putting the rich and the famous on stage. Because what that says, I don't care if you do that, but what that says to the people in your crowd who have been loyal to you for years, who've never graced that stage, you don't matter as much as that guy who's never been here does.
Yeah.
And I just think you got to stop that. You got to stop that because those congregants, you built your church on their backs. This guy is famous for 5 minutes, and you put him on stage, and then the next minute he's off doing who knows what. I just think it's a slap in the face.
Yeah,
so you shouldn't do it.
So probably Pope Francis has put a few noses out of joint with some of our bishops. I think, because they would think, well, that's very odd having a cardinal who's not from a prominent local church. But I think it's quite good. It makes us think.
Good. Yes.
The other thing is that we have, so here on the coast, we've been fairly Anglo-Saxon in the past, but we're getting less so. We're becoming more multicultural.
praise God.
And the Catholic Church by title is universal. So it's not any one culture. Nothing wrong with it.
Yeah.
Some of our churches come from a particular culture. But ours is, and ours in the past was very Irish dominated in Australia. Most of our people, my forebears, were more Irish than anything else. So that was the dominant culture. But we're very much, since the Second World War and in recent times, we're much more complex and coming from so many different countries. And so like having a cardinal who comes from the very small Ukrainian Rite or eparchy, and then on the coast we have more and more Indians who come from Kerala, which is in the southern part of India, and in that part of India there are two main groups who are Catholic who are not Latin Catholics, Syro-Malabar and Syro-Malankara, and the Syro-Malabar have their own bishop in Australia now, and so they'll have mass similar but in a different way. It's probably more like the Greek Orthodox would celebrate.
Right.
And then we have another group called Maronites who came from St. Maroon, that's in Lebanon, and they kind of and Lebanon is is a terrible state at the moment.
Absolutely.
And we had a lot of people came out in the 1890s or so from that area, and then when they've had the wars in the 70s, more came out. So there are Maronite Catholics.
Yes.
And we've just started the entrance on a Sunday night, a Maronite Mass.
True.
Which is not something I would do. There's a Maronite priest up here. And again, it's Mass, but they would probably Divine Liturgy.
Yeah.
But it's in English, except, which I love, is they have the words of institution. This is my body, this is my blood. It's said in the language of Jesus, Aramaic.
Wow.
And so even no matter what language you celebrate Mass in, they always say those words of consecration in the language of Jesus, which I think is kind of nice. That's the only Eastern Rite that does that. Yeah. Wow. But I think that's a lovely thing.
Do you know how to say it?
No.
Say please.
It'd be very nice.
But
they often, where I've been to a Mass, I haven't been to the one in my church because I don't have to go. I don't go to that. But in Sydney, when I've been to one, if they're in Arabic, on the screen they'll have the English. And so when they're in English, they have an Arabic on the screen. So it's kind of interesting. But I just think it's good for Catholics to know that we're not all Latin Catholics, but even though we are the majority of Catholics in Australia would have that background. But there's remnants of all those other groups, and I say now that they've picked probably one of the smallest groups for a cardinal. It's
That's very
See,
significant.
I like that because it screams we're all equal. We're all equal. Who cares about the size of the region you came from? We are all equal.
Every time we have Father Brian in, I feel like we've gone to school. As in, you have so much wisdom in you and I feel like I'm constantly learning and growing in this, which I love. I want to explore what that is. I think one of the great and beautiful things that the Catholic Church has brought in Christendom, and I would say, without the stewardship of the Catholic Church, there would be no Salvation Army, there would be no Pentecostal, there would be no Baptist, there would be no Anglican. Without the stewardship of our faith over millennia, none of us in that context would be here. So this is something we must honour and appreciate. But there hasn't been the great schisms and divides and separates. Even though you just articulated for us different expressions of tradition, right? It's the Catholic Church, as we understand it, Maronite expression, an Eastern expression, a Latin expression, however you might put that together. It's the Catholic Church, which is beautifully able to have maintained a course of oneness. I want to jump into that after the break, because there's richness there that we want to discuss.
There's too. Alive City, back in time. I don't know why I turned the mic off. I only just realized we were on air the whole time.
We're just covering up. And lucky
so maybe someone might actually tune in to call in and tell me what happened to Cradio.
Yes, they were hearing it. Thank God Father Brian's here with us, because conversations.
And nobody did any swearing. Nobody did any
kept us on the straight and narrow.
I'm sure we wouldn't swear, but you never know.
Father Brian made sure that we were all on track.
Something like that.
It's so wonderful to have you in the studio. Have nothing but love and honour for you. I appreciate your stewardship of the people of God in our region. And Evan and I have gone to school again, and so are our listeners. In terms of thank you so much for taking the time to help us understand global pictures, both in world events, but also within your tradition, within the stream of the Catholic Church, of which all of us can give thanks to God for being present with, no matter what expression of that stream you find yourself in. Without our brothers and sisters in the Orthodox and Catholic Church traditions, there would be no expression. So praise God for these beautiful, beautiful traditions that they've had. What I was saying before we went off air, I'd just like to dive in for a moment, if you don't mind. Indulge me. One of the things that I think we can learn today is how, you touched on it. You mentioned there's a Maronite Mass that's now in your building on a Sunday night, which is at the entrance. So which would be at what time, roughly?
5 o'clock.
5 o'clock, for those who are interested, dive in there. I had the privilege, actually, of meeting several times the Archbishop, Anton Charabay.
He's the Bishop of the Maronite Church.
Yes. I had the
of
privilege.
Australia and New Zealand.
Oh, okay.
So we have geographical dioceses. Yeah. So there's 28 geographical dioceses in Australia.
Yeah.
And then there are the Eastern Eparchies, which is their term for diocese, and they're Australia-wide.
Right.
So one of them is the Maronite Diocese, and they have their cathedral at Harris Park in Redfern. And cathedral just means the bishop's seat. Right. Cathedra is a seat.
Wow.
So, or throne, but it's really a seat.
Yeah.
It's a sign of their leadership. So a cathedral can be quite a humble building,
sure,
or something like St. Mary's Cathedral, which is not humble, but the actually name for it is to do with the bishop's seat.
Right.
Because it's the seat of power, if you like, or the seat of authority.
Yeah.
So that's where his seat is. So even if it was in a church that seated 100 people, as in some remote diocese in Mongolia or some other place where there's very few Catholics, where the bishop's seat is the cathedra. Cathedra is his seat, and the cathedral. So it doesn't. We always think of cathedral as a huge thing. So our cathedral in Broken Bay is at Waitara. And the church at the entrance is twice as big as the entrance church looks like a cathedral, but it's to do with the seat the authority in the bishop, and that's where he's the only one allowed to sit in that seat. Yeah. So I'd be in trouble if I sit in his seat.
Yeah, wow.
But it's just a symbol of his leadership. So we are the local church of Broken Bay, and then there's the local church of Sydney and Parramatta and all of that. So, and then there's the eastern things. So, but I forgot, I went off the track there, but you're talking about keeping the church together. And that's been a delicate balance. And there's often been times when, my definition of church is holy but always in need of reform. So that's really a form. That's what I would see of myself and the church. So we're all. It's God's with. God's with.
Say that again.
Well, God's with holy, but always in need of reform, which is really what we are.
Yes.
We're good, basically good,
Yes.
but we're also a propensity to sin.
Yeah.
And so the church, the Holy Spirit's with the church is with God.
Yes.
The church is God, but it's not a perfect institution because it's made up of us. But God is with the church. So be that as it may, so we have this divine institution, but individually we need always reform. So there's always been reforms, and sometimes groups have broken off. So the Reformation as such was a time of great trauma.
Sure.
But then there was what the so-called Counter-Reformation. Yeah. So the church said, well, we need to get our act together. So there's been some things which need to be reformed. And so that was part of because of that great trauma of split.
Yes.
And then a big reform in my lifetime was the Second Vatican Council. So that was between 1962 and 1965. And that's when Mass became in English rather than, and the language of the people.
Yes.
But Latin was originally the language of the people, because anyway. But then it became not the language of the people and became a church language. So, but it says sometimes those reform movements take 100 years to be implemented.
Yeah.
And the church always has that struggle with differences of opinions. But we would. That's why we have a bishop who is a sign of unity. So the bishop is a sign of unity of the Church of Broken Bay, and the bishops together are unified in the Bishop of Rome, who we call the Pope.
Yes.
But when Pope Francis was elected, he called himself the Bishop of Rome, which he is, and it's because he's a sign of the unity of the Church.
Wow.
So the bishops unify the Church under the Pope, and then the priest is a sign of the unity of the local church under the bishop, as in I have the responsibility for caring for the souls with the people of God in my area, and I'm the dean for the Central Coast. But anyway, so there's always differences of opinion,
of course.
Not everyone loves everything about everybody, and so there's always going to be those argy-bargy moments, and that's why having this synod in Rome was a time to nut out some of those things. Some of the things were taken off the agenda they would take longer to decide, and part of the thing is that because we're a universal church, we have so many different cultures. We might have a dominant Western culture, but there's so much of the church is in South America or in Africa, and some of the things which we would be quite comfortable with in a Western culture, they're not comfortable with in a much more structured society, and so that's always an interesting balance, and that's why something like the cardinals give good consultation to the Pope. So like in my parish council is consultative, so I'm not ruled by my parish council, but I'd be silly if I didn't listen to the people. So they give me advice, like in my finance committee gives me advice, but I don't have to it. Yes. So it's a funny system, and then the bishop has different levels of consultation. He has a college of deans, there's 3 deans. He has a college of council of priests. Some dioceses have a diocesan pastoral council, which has lay faithful as well. We don't at the moment. They're all giving consultation to the bishop so that he gets a better sense of his wisdom is. So the fullness of wisdom isn't necessarily in any person.
Yes.
And as I say, that's why we need to be listening. So that's why the politicians need to listen to the voices of, say, this election in America. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure our politicians here are listening to what it was saying about what they need to do or should be doing. And the church is also in that we need to be listening to people and their struggles. The Vatican Council talked about the joys, the hopes, the struggles of the people of God, of the ordinary people are the joys, hopes and struggles of the church.
Yeah.
So that's paraphrasing.
That's great.
But it means we need to listen to the ordinary events, and clergy, we need to be not in a gilded cage. We need to be with the people. Sometimes we don't marry, so we don't have that that part of our lives. But we all come from families and siblings and their children. Not quite the same, but we need to be close and try to listen and try to understand where people's lives are at. And if I don't do that, I'm not much good. And I think that's that compassion. Sometimes our translation of the scriptures, we use the Jerusalem Bible translation. It talks about Jesus had pity on them, but it's not a good translation. It sort of was moved with compassion.
Yes.
There's a beautiful church in the Holy Land on the Mount of Olives overlooking Jerusalem, which has a glass in it. And when you're celebrating Mass there with the altar, the people are seeing you, seeing the priest, but behind that you see the vista of Jerusalem, and it's the chapel of Jesus wept. Wow. So he wept over Jerusalem.
Yes.
And so that's a beautiful sign of the compassion of Jesus for the people. I think he'd be doing a lot of weeping at the moment for that area.
Oh, absolutely.
But that, to me, was a very powerful place to celebrate Mass. I did that, 30 years ago, but it's that sense of putting yourself in the shoes of others, and we need to do that. We need to have that sense, we're not fair dinkum is an old Australian expression, but and we can go off and be in a church world easily to do, or just in our own cocoon and for Catholic-wise clergy. And we're not thinking of the people of God. And the fact that so many of the church family don't come to church too often, but they'll come on occasions. So I think it's a bit like a family. We don't always agree with everything, but we try to keep doors open with teenagers and all of that.
That's
and I think
right.
the church we have this rump that come all the time, and some that come on occasions, some that come rarely. But they'll want something of the church, maybe just a funeral, maybe a baptism, maybe a wedding. But we need to make sure that that's a good and the spirit is in that thing, and we give our very best.
Amen.
So we're at service to those people. So I think I need to, and also the fact that ordinary people who maybe no religion, we would say calathumpians. That's an old expression.
I remember that. I
don't
remember
know.
that.
You've probably never heard of that expression.
Yes, that is. Yes,
but that's because people would say, "What religion are you?" I'm a calathumpian.
Calathumpian,
But or someone would say, "What religion are you?" And they said, I belong to this particular church in as much as that's the church I currently don't attend."
Yes.
So I always like that one. But whatever people's background, whether they're believers or not, we need to be listening to them, and we need to be of service to them. So,
Amen. Yeah. See, I feel like I'm back in college in a lecture hall.
Yeah.
Sorry about
The
that.
only thing I'm missing is my lollipop. This is great.
Anyway,
this is very
wonderful.
great, very educational, but also very edifying.
Do you know, you're labouring compassion. And I shared with you off air, you remembered because your mind's like a steel trap, but I talked about how I function with a global missions movement called Impact Nations, and we do missions trips, which we call Journeys of Compassion. And my spiritual father, Papa Steve Stewart, who oversees, is the founder of this organisation, he labours actually our understanding of compassion. The Greek word is splanknersomai, I think is the word. I probably got the pronunciation terrible. I probably murdered it, but splanknersomai, which is to be moved at a gut level.
Okay, yes.
To be moved at the depth of my gut with compassion for, with feeling for, to enter into.
That's when we say, when a translation says pity,
Yeah, it
that's
doesn't cover it,
condescending.
does it?
Yeah.
So it's.
Yeah.
I never like that translation.
Yeah.
I mean, depending what translation of the Bible you use, but I never like that in the one that we use for our liturgy. But the compassion is in English anyway the best. Or put your shoe, wear the shoes of others.
Someone else,
is a good thing. But anyway, so there are a lot of challenges in our world. We're quite a secular society, but deep down there's a lot of caring. When crises happen, like that child in,
That's right.
It brings out the best in people. And when you see what people write on the wall and things and flowers, and there's a goodness in people, and I think we
That's
need to
the
pick
word.
up and see that God is present in those people. And well, the Vatican II one of the people talked about anonymous Christians. It's a kind of complicated thing. It's saying we can recognise the presence of Christ in others, even if they don't see Christ in what they're doing, but we can see Christ-like features. So
This is wonderful.
anyway,
is wonderful.
But it's I suppose not to see the world as an enemy,
yes.
but to try to see God's Spirit work in things. So it's a bit like the glass half full or the half empty.
Yeah.
And maybe I've tried to be an optimist. You can be easily pessimistic today with numbers in church and things that are happening in the world, but we need to be people of hope. That's another thing. Compassion and hope.
Yes.
If we don't have those, we haven't got much to offer.
I read yesterday, I get every day from Richard Raw.
Ah, yes.
And he actually, in yesterday's commentary, highlighted the first responders, the ambulance, the first aid, the surf lifesavers, the people in community that would run into a difficult or dark or dangerous circumstance for the sake of others, and just highlighting the way of the kingdom that is evident there, because Christ is filling all things in every way, including those people who might manifest or demonstrate that. That seems to be what you're saying.
Yeah, and we were talking about the Feast of Christ the King, which we're going to celebrate in 3 years, and that's
in 3 weeks.
3 weeks.
Yep.
The Catholics anyway, and it's kind of working for the kingdom. That terminology, kingdom, gets a lot of different. It's nothing to do with King Charles and all that, but it's the kingdom of justice and doing the caring for others, and that whole thing of 9/11. When everyone was running out of the building and the poor firemen were running in, and many of those wouldn't have survived.
Yes.
That's a real sign of service, isn't it?
Isn't
and
it?
We take for granted, and many people who maybe not churched, but they be volunteering in life-saving, volunteering in bushfire brigades.
Yes. Yep.
There's a lot of goodness
Isn't
in
there?
people.
This is goodness. And good was the only ever ascribed to God back in the day. Like we've corrupted that now. But originally, the original phraseology, that word good could only ever be attributed to God. And we're seeing it today in these situations. How fascinating, Evan, is this God? I'm so grateful for your time, Father Brian. We're going to dive in here we go, song coming on.
Lauren Daigle. Oh, Lord.
Go Chuck Swindoll, who loves the New Expressions program.
Yes, he does.
And probably there's a link to the IFL Insights for Living whatever it is, that the website they just put on. There's probably a link there back to the New Expressions program.
It might be, actually.
I would be surprised if there isn't, because he's prolific. He probably,
I know.
he would have. It's probably on his front page.
Most likely.
Listen to Craig and Evan.
I'm sure he's got the app.
Expression. Yeah, of course he's got it. Remus CC phone app on your smartphone. Like everyone I know's got that. Father Brian's got it. I'm convinced of that.
Yes.
Big fan of.
Yes. Just being shy about it at
Remus
the moment.
says,
We
just being
understand.
shy.
We understand he's being shy.
Yeah, I don't feel to say anything in that space. But what an absolute delight the last, hour has been, 50 minutes of listening, Father Brian, to you. As representative in our region of the expression of Catholic Church. There's so much that we can dive into in these last kind of moments, but you were telling me that you've got a couple of housemates, and that these guys are of Indian background. And is it the southern part of India, I think you were saying?
They're both from Kerala. One is from a Syro-Malabar background, which is that Eastern eparchy. One is from Kerala, but he's Latin rite, so same rite as me.
Yep.
So in Kerala, probably half of the Catholics are Syro-Malabar and half of them are Latin, but maybe something like that. But anyway, they're both. One is from a religious order who'll be here for a time and then go back to there and to India, and one is come from India, but he's become a migrator to Australia, and he'll be ordained a priest to serve in Broken Bay. he makes a life commitment to serve this local church of Broken Bay, like I have.
Yes.
So I could work for something else for a time. I worked for the Bishops' Conference for 3 years, supporting clergy. That's about 8 years ago.
Yes.
But I'm committed to this local church
Beautiful.
in the 20-something parishes, in the Northern Beaches, North Shore, and the Central Coast.
Beautiful.
So anyway, but I was just we were in the break. We were talking about St. Francis of Assisi.
Yes.
And I think that was the inspiration for Pope Francis, who really name is George.
Right.
But he,
Jorge.
but he, as in tradition, as in a lot of the famous, but they change their name when they feel a calling, and religious orders often change their names. When you joined an order, it's not so much now. They used to get a hat, and then you could be called like one of the. They could have been called Mary, and all of a sudden you were Philomena.
Oh.
And sometimes you got good names, and sometimes you got horrible names. But it was about a change, and I was just saying in our parish we have 400 niches beside the church for ashes. Catholics didn't really get cremated much in the past, but in these day and age more and more do. And we have ashes so that when they've got people have died and cremated, they have a memorial there and they put the ashes in a niche. And I've now getting statues in each section of various saints. And one of them is St. Francis of Assisi, who I think speaks very much to our world at the moment. He's a saint from hundreds of years ago, but his sense of the environment and care for all of God's creation speaks to modern humanity. And Pope Francis, as I say, was inspired by him for his choosing the name Francis.
Yes.
And he had an encyclical or a teaching called Laudate Si, which was about giving emphasis not just to humanity, but to all of God's creation. And I think so many people in our world today have a respect for creation and God's creation. Well, we would see it as God's creation. They might necessarily ascribe to a faith, but they say we have to respect, we have to worry about the climate, have to respect God's creation. But we would see it as God's creation. So that can speak to a lot of people, and the challenge is to say it's God is behind the beauty of creation.
That's right, yeah.
But that does speak to people. I think at the moment, when I was driving along, I saw some jacarandas coming out,
yes,
which are nice.
Everywhere,
even though
aren't they?
I forgot, I think it's South American or African. It's not a native plant, but a lot of them were planted in Australia. And to me, it's always a sign that Advent is close, which is the 4 weeks before Christmas, and it's a sign of preparing for Christmas. So, and in our Catholic tradition, it's the new year. So there's the new year, 1st of January, and there's a new church year, which begins on the first Sunday of Advent. So it's the fresh start, fresh beginning.
Right.
Let's commit myself once again to living my faith.
Beautiful.
So that's how I see it. So we have the last feast of the year is Christ the King. So it's to say that everything culminates in Christ, is through him, with him, and in him. Everything is in Jesus. And then it begins afresh with the fresh start as we prepare for Christmas and begin the cycle of readings again. So that to me is important. Tonight in our parish we're having a volunteers thank you. December becomes too busy, so we try to have it in November.
Right.
So we've got about 100 or so coming, people who do different things. Yeah. Some teach catechetics in the state school, some just read at Mass, some do little things, some do a lot of things. But it's a way of us saying thank you to them.
Beautiful.
I think it's important that in the church talk, we're a Eucharistic people. So sometimes we call the Mass or communion even the Eucharist, which actually it means to give thanks. So that you could say why I come to Mass for different things, but ultimately to give thanks to God and to be grateful for what we have. And with those whole things when people were healed, and the 10 people were healed, only one came back and say thank you. Yeah. But we need to be a people who are grateful, and so that's just an important way for us as a particular faith community, like the parish, to say thank you to these volunteers. But I think the more and more we say thank you as a society for everybody, and particularly going back to that child that died, to think of all those people who volunteer in our society. And here on the Central Coast, so many people in our life-saving, volunteer firefighters, so many areas, they give back. They mightn't do it in for Christ or for a Christian way of things, but it's for because they're caring for their fellow human beings.
Yes.
And I see that as a very good thing, and I think we need to be very grateful.
Yeah.
And be grateful for all of those people who have helped us. So that's kind of good. So I hope
wonderful.
Christmas is a good time for our families. As a church, it's a time when we welcome a lot more people to our services or mass. So I always tell the people to be welcoming. They say it's my job because I'm the leader, but if I'm friendly and everyone else snarls at someone or says, I didn't see you last week, that's not much of a welcome. It's a bit like welcoming family or people who you haven't seen for a long while to try to be on your best behaviour and be truly welcoming. It's much easier if we're all doing it and all doing our bit. So I see that as it's a time of blessing.
We all have a part to play, don't we? All of us carry a dimension of Christ.
That's right. It's not just the professional minister.
Quite the opposite.
In a sense, we're all ministers. But in a Catholic tradition is that there are ordained ministers,
right.
And then there are those who are dedicated as religious nuns and brothers who are dedicated to a particular service, but all of us have ministry.
Beautiful.
So some of us ordained ministers and some of us are not ordained, but we're all got to minister, serve others. So
there's a couple
I'm going
of things.
off. I can go on a lot of tangents.
There's a couple of things I want to circle back to just really quickly. You talked about the jacaranda trees. That's just given me a fresh eyes to see it because they are everywhere at the moment. So that's a flag to Advent. So I thank you for giving us that gift because I'd never seen that before.
And
now
we wear vestments, so we wear different colours for different times of the year.
Right.
Advent, the colour is purple.
Oh, okay.
So
there you go.
So that was a movie, wasn't it? The colour purple.
That's right.
That's got nothing to do with Advent, but that's just another. I don't even know why that movie was called The Colour Purple, but we wear purple or mauve vestments for Advent and for Lent.
Okay.
It's a time of preparation for a big feast. So preparing for Christmas and preparing for Easter. But Easter is our main feast, even though people would say Christmas is the most revered, but actually Easter is our the feast of the feast. And Saturday, even the celebration of the resurrection is the feast of feasts. So even in that whole Easter, it's that resurrection, Jesus dying and rising to life. Well, we see that as one event anyway, but that is the centre of our thing, and second to that is Christmas. So anyway.
I don't know. It's been such an extraordinary blessing hearing that. My wife was telling me the reason the jacaranda trees are so prolific is because the maternity hospitals back in the day would give young mums a jacaranda seed.
I think, and that was particularly in the North Shore.
Yeah.
Somebody did that
right.
in the North Shore because my last parish was Northbridge, Narrabeen, Willoughby.
And they're
everywhere there. And there's a street in Kirribilli that everyone goes to. But they're very messy trees, but they're pretty. Good if you don't have to clean up after them.
That's right. Stunning to look at. And just if we land on this, you talked about the Great Amen. Yeah, what was that again?
That's just in our Eucharistic prayer is around the words of institution. This is my body, this is my blood. At the very end of it, I lift the elements of the chalice and the bread, and which we say was the body and blood of Jesus, and we say through him, with him, and in him, all glory and honour is yours, Almighty Father, forever and ever. And the Amen is the people's response to that prayer. And it's called not just Amen, which is obviously so be it or whatever. Yes. It's the great Amen, because it's to say everything is through him and with him, all in Jesus. Yeah.
Amen.
You've been listening to an encore presentation of New Expressions, which can be heard live every Friday morning at 10 a.m. on 94.9 Rima Central Coast.